to take note of answers. Senator Collins.
I rise to take note of answers to all coalition questions.
You have the call.
Deputy President, I rise to take note of the Minister's response to the question of national security and defence spending. Once again, we've seen Labor dodge, deflect and ultimately disrespect the seriousness of Australia's strategic circumstances and the question of national security. I asked the Minister representing the Prime Minister why the Albanese government had abandoned its previous commitment to set defence spending targets as a proportion of GDP. In 2022, Labor claimed it was vital to set such targets in response to rising global threats. Yet now, as the world becomes even more unstable, the government refuses to follow through. That commitment was not made lightly. It was announced in the context of an increasingly volatile Indo-Pacific, with rising military assertiveness from authoritarian powers and our most important allies urging Australia to pull its weight. And yet today, that commitment has disappeared into thin air, without sufficient explanation, without accountability. The Minister notes an increase in defence spending, but fails to answer why it is not to the sufficient level promised. And what did we get from Minister Wong? A distraction from one inconvenient truth. That truth, Deputy President, is that Labor doesn't take defence seriously. This government has no credible plan to lift defence spending to the levels our allies and even their own Defence Strategic Review say are needed. Instead of providing a real answer, the Minister threw around weak excuses. I also asked whether the Prime Minister has ever attended or participated in an Australian military exercise. As someone who joined our troops during Exercise Talisman Sabre, I've seen firsthand the professionalism, sacrifice and strategic importance of what they do. The Minister talked about herself, about the Minister for Defence, but not the Prime Minister. I acknowledge her efforts and appreciate her involvement, but it is not unreasonable to expect the Prime Minister of this nation to show up for our troops. Some might think otherwise, but those on this side of the chamber do not. Finally, I raised the Prime Minister's decision to spend 6 days touring China while choosing not to attend Talisman Sabre. He had time to meet with People's Liberation Army officers, but not our own troops or allied commanders. I asked why he made time for China's military leadership, but couldn't find time to stand beside Australian soldiers during our most significant joint defence exercise.
Shame on the Prime Minister.
What was he doing there? Patting pandas in China. Pandering to China, some might say. He had time to stroll down memory lane in China, paying tribute to past Labor figures and visiting tourist sites. But he couldn't find the time to visit the troops. He didn't even bother to show up. The Prime Minister of this country chose to shake hands with officers from China's People's Liberation Army instead of standing shoulder to shoulder with Australian soldiers and our allies during a critical moment for our regional defence posture.
Order.
That's not just poor optics. I believe it is a failure of leadership.
Order.
Supplementary questions were put to the Minister, but
Senator
again,
Grogan.
no real answers. Is it true that the Prime Minister
Senator
has
Polley.
never attended an Australian military exercise? No denial. Just more waffle. And why did he prioritise a 6-day China tour over meeting our defence personnel? Again, nothing of substance. It certainly doesn't pass the pub test. Labor wants the headline without the hard decisions.
Order.
They want to talk about strategic competition, but they won't fund the capabilities. They want to mention AUKUS, but they're asleep at the wheel when it comes to delivery. Our defence industry is at stake. There is no continuous building program. nor
Order.
rules about local content
Order.
to the
Order.
detriment of our national security. It's easy to talk about hard power when you're behind a podium in Canberra. It's much harder to actually stand up at Shoalwater Bay, stand next to our soldiers and prove you understand the stakes.
Senator O'Neill, sit down. I'm not going to call anyone until there's order in the chamber. Senator Ayres, some of your contributions have been very unhelpful to order in the chamber. You had the right to stand up and take a point of order, Senator Ayres. Instead, you decided to interject from your seat. That is highly disorderly. Senator O'Sullivan.
President, further to what you've just ruled there, I'd ask you, Senator Ayres, to reflect on the fact that you were directing him to be quiet, and he was in both forceful and the way that he spoke in directing his comments through to Senator Collins, but the way that he was addressing it through you I thought was entirely inappropriate.
Everyone in this chamber has the right to take a point of order if they disagree with, if they have a legitimate point of order to take against a speaker. Clearly you knew there was no point of order to take, Senator Ayres, which is why you did it from your seat. However, we should continue with the taking note. Senator O'Neill.
Oh, thank you very much for the call, Deputy Speaker. And what we just saw in question time with the question and with the response from a very new senator, and I will acknowledge that she gave a very thoughtful contribution yesterday in her first speech, is a clear misunderstanding of how a proper cabinet government that is disciplined undertakes the share of the work distributed across all of those people for whom there are responsibilities. Both the Defence Minister and the Foreign Minister attended Talisman Sabre, and I'm glad that the new member has arrived and she's had the experience of sharing some time with the ADF. But dripping with sanctimony about 2 or 3 days with the ADF is no argument of any substance at all. The defence of the nation is a critical part of what this government does. There's overlap in all sorts of other areas with state governments, but defence is the responsibility of the federal government. It's so important that of all the things that could be spoken about in the address in reply, we had